More now on the FBI's release of its report on Hillary Clinton's email investigation, the so-called 302 interview, a couple of hours long. And Glenn Hall joins us, U.S. editor of Wall Street Journal. You've been reading through it. What are you, about three-quarters of the way through?
Well, I got to the end during the segment, yeah.
All right. What do you take away from it? Give me your big takeaway here.
Okay, so first big takeaway is that the chain of custody in terms of all of the technology that might have housed these emails and might have connected to these servers, including the archives and the servers themselves, is very, very loose. And in fact, there's a laptop.
Reckless loose?
Well, there's a laptop that held the archives that nobody knows where it is. There's a thumb drive that all the archives were put on. Nobody knows where that is. There are 13 mobile devices that may have synced with it. Nobody knows where they are. So
that's more than reckless. I mean, what's more than reckless other than criminal? All right, what else do you see in here? What jumped out at me, and you may have heard our last set of interviews, she seems to say very often, I can't recall, I'm not aware of that, I don't know, I didn't think about it, as if she's either, really informed or has serious memory problems.
Well, I think you could put it this way. I mean, if you wanted to be generous, she was someone who was working at the very high level and was not concerned about the details of these things, assumed everybody else would make sure the servers were secure, the emails were right. She relied on everybody else to make sure that what they were emailing her was not classified, was not confidential. So she wasn't taking ownership of that part of the equation. She was expecting others to do it that way for her and relying on her aides and others to screen those emails for her.
She never deleted nor instructed anybody to delete her email to avoid complying with federal records laws or the FBI state requests for information. Pretty much the same explanation she gave for why she even created the server, which was out of convenience, and yet, as Catherine Herridge pointed out, no follow-up questions by the FBI.
Yeah, so when you look at this in its totality, you see that Hillary Clinton was staying really as far away from responsibility as she could in those things, whether because she just wanted to be focused at the high level or she had safety concerns for her responsibility for these things. But I think what you see is other people were supposed to make sure things got done for her. And so she stepped back from that. She didn't, in fact, review all of the emails herself when they were requested by the State Department. She asked her attorneys and her staff members to do that. She didn't supervise that process directly according to these these documents we got from the FBI. So all of those things, she wanted to help the State Department get that information, and she asked other people to do it.
It is a crime to intentionally mishandle classified information. And I emphasize the word intentionally. And yet nowhere during the course of this interview is Hillary Clinton asked about her intent, which would seem to be a fundamental question that any lawyer or the FBI or a prosecutor would ask during one of these closed-door sessions.
When you look at the exchanges that the FBI provided us, you see them asking about specific emails. They would say, when you sent this email, did you think there was anything classified in there? So they're trying to get at it. And she would look at it, and in their response, they would say, well, she said, no, I don't see anything there that seems to be classified, even though it is now considered to be confidential or secret, and in some cases top secret. So what she was saying to the FBI was, I received these emails, I looked at them, I was not supposed to receive confidential emails, and I don't see anything in there that should have been marked confidential. And she said before, just to be fair, she thinks the State Department and others retroactively looking at these things are being much more rigid about what's confidential and secret than she thought was necessary.
Yeah, except that spy satellite pictures of the enemy and drone strikes is a no-brainer in terms of top secret and confidential and classified.
I think that's getting back to Director Comey's view of all of this as being reckless and careless, right?
Yeah, which seems like the same thing as grossly negligent, which, by the way, is a crime. All right, thank you very much for being with us. Good to see you. Updating Fox top story, the FBI now releasing documents from its investigation into Hillary Clinton's private email server, including notes from its closed-door interview with Clinton. Mike Emanuel live at our D.C. newsroom. And Mike, what else are we learning from these notes?
Well, Greg, Hillary Clinton was asked about her knowledge regarding the different levels of classification of U.S. government information. Clinton told the FBI she did not pay attention to the level of classified information and that she took all classified information seriously. The FBI notes Clinton was aware there was a private email server in her Chappaqua, New York basement, but did not know of the various server systems until being made aware recently. This interview notes Clinton did not explicitly request permission to use a private server or email address. Greg?
Mike, Donald Trump's campaign just released a statement. Tell us about it.
That's right. Jason Miller, senior communications advisor to the Trump campaign, says, quote, Hillary Clinton is applying for a job that begins each day with a top secret intelligence briefing, and the notes from her FBI interview reinforce her tremendously bad judgment and dishonesty. The Trump advisor goes on to say she cannot be trusted with the presidency and its chief obligation as commander-in-chief of the U.S. Armed Forces. Clinton campaign spokesman Brian Fallon says the campaign is pleased the FBI has released the materials from Clinton's interview, which her team had requested. He notes her use of a single email account was clearly a mistake, and she has taken responsibility for it. And the Clinton campaign concludes, these materials make clear why the Justice Department believed there was no basis to move forward with this case. However, I should note some Republicans and Democrats are calling for all of the relevant materials to be released. Greg?
Mike Emanuel live in Washington. Mike, thanks. Let's bring in Fox News anchor Chris Wallace. We just found out today that Chris will be moderating the third and final presidential debate on October 19th. And congratulations again. We had talked earlier, Chris, but this is something I think to be proud of. At the same time, you're looking at it certainly as a real challenge, aren't you?
Oh, a real challenge and a big responsibility. First of all, I can't even begin to write questions because we're talking 6-7 weeks from now. I've got to watch what happens in the first couple of debates, see what ground is covered, what isn't. You got to see what's going on in the campaign. You got to see what's going on in the world. So it'll only be in about the last week or 10 days that I'll try to come up with the right topic areas and the right questions to ask about those topics.
And the 6 different topics, now those are not settled by both sides. That's simply what, in the end, you decide on, right?
Yeah, that was the most daunting moment yesterday when they called and asked me if I wanted to do it, they being the Commission on Presidential Debates. The way it's divided is there will be 6 buckets, 6 topics, ISIS, immigration, whatever. And I said, well, who decides what those are? And they said, you do. So that'll be an interesting thing to sit there and decide what are the 6 topics. But as I say, a lot of it will be to see what ground has already been covered and what I think are the most fertile areas to still be discussing less than 3 weeks before voters go to the polls and choose the next president.
Now, on Sunday, on Fox News Sunday, you usually have a guest or two, and you go through what's topical, and you challenge them quite often. But this is going to be different, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I'm keenly aware of that. On Fox News Sunday, I do a lot of research. I have a great team, and we try to come up with very pointed questions and very strong follow-ups. This is not a Sunday show interview. This is a debate. So to a large degree, I want to just be able to throw the piece of meat into the cage and let the 2 lions go at it. And to the degree that you don't even see that I'm there, that's the mark of how successful a moderator I'll be. I mean, if at the end of the debate, folks say, that was a great debate, I really learned a lot about Trump and Clinton, and if there's a third-party candidate, that one as well, and I don't even remember you were on the stage, then I'll have done a really good job.
I'm sure it'll happen just like that. Let me switch subjects. Almost every day seems to be a new revelation with regard to Hillary Clinton, either her foundation and accusations that donors are buying access or influence, or her email server. And today, of course, the FBI releasing the notes from its interview of Hillary Clinton that Saturday, just before James Comey, the FBI director, announced that he was not referring any criminal charges. What's your reaction to this today?
Well, I would pick up on your last point. Comey did not recommend any criminal charges against her. I think this was heavily lawyered. She's got very good lawyers. And look, the notes aren't the most impressive, don't make her look great in the sense that she doesn't recall a lot of stuff. She was relying on her aides and their judgment as to whether something was sensitive or not. She didn't know when there was a C on a document that meant that it was classified. It may have been erroneous, but she didn't know that's what it was supposed to mean. So she doesn't look like she was completely in command or in control, but that wasn't the point. She was trying to get through that 3-hour interview without a criminal referral, and she succeeded in that. So even if the document does good participating in those presidential debates.
But as you say, at a political cost, at the top of the show, we put up on the screen, her memory problems in the interview, couldn't recall training on classified information, couldn't recall using her power to classify, couldn't recall receiving emails that should not be on an unclassified system, could not recall briefings she received when leaving office because of her 2012 concussion. There they are back on our screen. I mean, this is fodder for her opponent in this presidential race, Donald Trump, to say, you see, there are serious questions about not just judgment, but competence. Would you expect Trump to go there?
Well, sure. Of course he will. And as I say, it doesn't make her look particularly good, but that wasn't job one in that interview. Job one in that interview was to get out of it without being indicted. And that's what she succeeded at. And I suspect that if she had it to do all over again, she'd do the same thing. I'm not saying that she's lying. Right. That may well be that she didn't recall it. But I don't think the question of her concerned as to how it would look if it was made public, and she didn't know at that time it was going to be made public, that was very much a secondary concern. A prime concern was to not end up with an indictment.
Yeah, well, I don't recall. Certainly helps in that regard, but perhaps at a political cost. We'll wait and see. Chris, thanks very much, and thanks for your thoughts on the upcoming debate, and we wish you well as the moderator. You'll be terrific, I'm sure.
Well, thank you, and we'll be talking a lot between now and then. I don't get to go on stage till October 19th, so it's a long wait.
I don't think I want to be in your shoes, but good luck to you. Thanks, Chris. This weekend on Fox News Sunday, Chris will be talking with Dr. Ben Carson, former rival and now an advisor to Donald Trump, and Dr. Jill Stein, the Green Party presidential nominee. That's coming up Sunday. Check your local Fox station for Fox News Sunday with debate moderator Chris Wallace. Stick around. We'll be right back.
I can tell you it's been one lousy job market this summer. The economy creating 151,000 new jobs in the month of August. That is fewer than had been anticipated. Donald Trump's campaign not wasting any time ripping the report, saying, and I quote, "The stagnant Clinton-Obama economy fails to deliver the jobs Americans desperately need." So does Trump or Clinton have the right plan to get workers back on track? I want to ask Democratic strategist Christine Setzer, Trump economic advisor Steve Moore, and FBN's very own Dagan McDowell. Good to see all you guys. Steve, full disclosure, you are a Trump economic advisor, so I'm guessing you would say Hillary certainly doesn't have the right plan. What is it that you think he can do right now to get and create jobs?
Well, first of all, this was another kind of dismal economic report. And when you have a record high number of people out of the workforce, it's just big trouble for the economy. We're not producing enough jobs to get everybody back to work. And not only that, but, the wages just aren't keeping pace with the amount of people, money people are spending. So we need dramatic change. The problem for Hillary, she's talking about pretty much staying on the course we're on. The heart of our plan.
Maybe even making it worse via more taxes?
Well, first of all, Trish, could you think of a worst possible time to raise taxes than right now, when the economy, in my opinion, the business sector is in a soft recession right now. So we want to cut those taxes for the businesses. We want to promote American energy, and we want to just get government off the back of businesses so they can grow.
Dagan, when you look at these numbers, you see that some jobs were added, but these are not really jobs that are paying well, are they?
There are manufacturing job losses, construction job losses. The labor force participation rate is still near a 40-year low. You have tens of millions of people who have simply given up looking for work. And so there needs to be an attitude shift. Hillary Clinton's plan is more of the same with a different result, which I've said before is the very definition of insanity. She wants to raise taxes and she wants to spend money because, again, people in government know how to spend your money, your tax dollars, better than you do.
Christy, what do you say to that?
I say we're being a little doom and gloom on this panel here today. Look, 150,000 jobs is not bad. It's not amazing. It's not as great as we had in the previous months where we were over 250,000. But it's really not terrible. And in general, if you look at the broader picture of the economy, you're looking at an economy that, again, is also good, not great. Of course, there are sectors that could be doing a little bit better that are lagging behind. But even the things that, you know, the traditional criticisms that we hear, like Steve pointed to, of people being out of work for too long, it's not really clear exactly why that is. Maybe it's because now they have health care and they don't actually want a new job, things like that. So overall, again, I think that we're being a little bit more pessimistic than we sort of need to be here. This was an okay report.
4.9% unemployment rate. It certainly sounds good, right? It sounds good. But let's peel back the layers on that a little bit more. I mean, Dagan, wages haven't budged for people in certainly the last 8 years, even longer. You can look at the last 20-year period and adjusted for inflation, things are going nowhere.
And the wage growth that we were starting to get, it was up about 2.6% year over year in the last month. That actually slowed in the most recent jobs report. You have an economy that's growing at 1.1% in the most recent quarter. And one thing that neither one of these candidates talks about that really gets my goat is the fact that the national debt has doubled under President Obama. It's nearly $20 trillion. We spend 49% on Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and other entitlements. And the interest on our national debt in about 5 years is going to top what we spend on national defense.
Yeah, I just want to point out, by the way, you look at this, right? Most important issues facing the country right now, economy, overwhelmingly, according to the latest Fox poll, is the #1 issue. Is this perhaps why we're starting to see Hillary Clinton's lead weaken?
It's almost totally evaporated in the last 10 days. Now, to your point, it's a fair point. You know, why aren't these candidates talking more about debt reduction?
Your candidate and Clinton.
But let me make this point. Our view, Trish, is until you get this economy. Look, if we've been growing at 1% for 6 months, that's pathetic. I'm sorry, it's just not good enough for the. And you just ask the average American, do you think the economy is healthy? I think this line that the economy is good that the Clinton administration, the Clinton team is talking about, people don't buy into that. They just don't buy into it.
I mean, people don't feel like it's
1.5, just one more statistic.
But I think they do,
1.5 million fewer manufacturers today than 10 years ago.
They feel like it's okay. And again, if you're one of those people who, who actually has been looking for a long time, then sure, you're one of those pockets of people that Clinton really does want to address. But again, for the most part, if you want a job, you're going to be able to get one.
The #1 issue, if they felt like things were okay, if things were okay,
because the economy is always the #1 issue.
Continue to cite it is the thing that concerns them the most right now.
Yeah, in the absence of anything going on in terms of national security, the economy is almost always the #1 issue. Of course, think about your personal security.
Yeah, and by the way, her lead is being chipped away at. We just got a poll out from Investors Business Daily today that shows the two of them actually completely 100% tied in a 4-way race, and she's only 1 point ahead of Donald Trump in a 2-way race. So, and things might be shifting.
Clinton and Trump in the Fox News poll are tied in terms of who will do a better job on the economy.
We've got it.
They are at a dead heat, so it is a drop ball.
If we're going to win this race, we have to have a big lead. We should have a big lead. And what Trump has to do in that big debate is he has to contrast what he wants to do on the economy. He wants to cut taxes. Hillary wants to raise them. He wants to get rid of Obamacare.
It should be an easy thing to do because she's talking about a continuation of Obama's policies, which obviously haven't worked. Thank you so much. It's good to have all of you guys here today. The FBI releasing a report on the Hillary Clinton email investigation, including notes from the FBI's private interview with Secretary Clinton. This comes after several Freedom of Information Act requests. Catherine Herridge is in Washington, D.C. Mike Emanuel is in D.C. right now for us with more. Mike.
Trish, the FBI says its belief is the Clinton private email server had not been hacked, but it was unable to draw the same conclusion about the 13 BlackBerry devices she used during her time as Secretary of State. It should be noted the FBI did not have the opportunity to analyze those email devices. The Bureau did get to look at 2 out of her 3 iPad tablets and concluded there was no evidence they had been hacked. Clinton said any exchange of classified information about the U.S. drone program was either done at the White House, in her office at the State Department, or on a secure phone line. There's also a fair amount of information Clinton claims she could not recall, such as any briefing or training on classified information, specialized training for the handling of U.S. government's most sensitive secrets, and she says she could not recall when she got a security clearance. RNC Chairman Reince Priebus tweeted moments ago the following: the FBI summary of their interview with Hillary Clinton is a devastating indictment of her judgment, honesty, and basic competency. As for the Clinton campaign, spokesman Brian Fallon says, quote, "We are pleased that the FBI has released the materials from Hillary Clinton's interview, as we had requested. While her use of a single email account was clearly a mistake, and she has taken responsibility for it, these materials make clear why the Justice Department believed there was no basis to move forward with this case." Clinton was asked about her knowledge regarding top secret, secret, and confidential classifications of U.S. government information, and she responded that she did not pay attention to the level and took all classified information seriously. Trish?
Oh, wow. Thank you very much. Mike Emanuel, looks like this scandal is starting to hit Hillary Clinton in the polls. A new poll out today from Investors Business Daily shows Clinton and Trump tied in a four-way race, and Clinton just 1 point ahead of Donald Trump in a two-way race. Larry Sabato is with us now with more. And Larry, do you think that the scandals, whether it be email, whether it be the foundation, are starting to catch up with her?
Well, that could be part of it. Let's remember, always look at the polling averages. Hillary Clinton's up around 4 in the polling averages. When the polling averages change so that, it's tied, we'll talk again. But don't cherry pick polls. That's a bad practice.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me just point out the other poll that came out, our very own Fox News poll. And in that four-way race, she's only up 3 points there. So, there's some consistency in that these have just come out within the last couple of days, and there seems to be a little bit of a turnaround here.
Well, she was up 6 in the two-way, and actually the two-way is a better measure of what eventually happens in November, because third-party candidates almost inevitably decline as you approach Election Day. But be that as it may, you're absolutely right to say there have been loads of controversies over the summer for both candidates, and they do take a toll, except for one thing. These two are so well known, and people have focused on them so much, because this campaign has been more intense than any I can ever remember, that I think the vast majority have already made their decision, one way or the other.
Mm-hmm. Larry, let me ask you about some of the down-ballot races. A third of all Clinton voters now said that they will split the ticket. How is Donald Trump basically affecting all the other races that are out there?
It depends on the state and district. If you have a deeply red Republican state or district, the incumbent or the Republican candidate is not about to put any distance between themselves and Trump. But if you've got a very competitive district, and for some reason the incumbent Republican senator or House member thinks that Hillary Clinton will carry that district, then they're going to try to put some distance between themselves and Trump carefully, because they don't want to alienate the Trump voters. So they'll say something like, I'm running on my own record, and here's what I've done. And they'll talk about supporting the nominee without naming the nominee.
So you think that the advantage is going to go to the GOP in this?
I think it depends on the district and the state. Okay. I mean, in terms of the Senate, no. In the House, I think Republicans will hold the House. That's been my feeling all along.
We also saw, and we repeatedly see this, when it comes to trustworthiness, Hillary Clinton really struggles. It almost feels as though a lot of Americans, they don't like her, they don't trust her, they're looking for something else. But on the other hand, she continues to paint Donald Trump as a bit crazy, and occasionally he's done a few things along the way that are giving the other side the ammunition to continue saying that. Do you feel, however, in recent days, and you can use his trip to Mexico as an example, he's been able to temper some of that so that he is presenting himself in a more presidential light?
Well, certainly that trip to Mexico City would suggest that. I think the new team maybe is having some influence on him. And look, candidates learn as they go along. These are bright people. They don't get there without being bright. So I would expect that to be the case, especially leading up to the first debate. That's a critical moment for both candidates. They have to do well.
We're going to be watching. Thank you so much. Good to see you, Larry. Tropical storm Hermine moving up the East Coast after making landfall in Florida as a Category 1 hurricane. The storm leaving thousands without power and lots of devastation in its wake. Ian Sears flew right through the center of Hermine. He's flown through nearly 100 storms, and he joins us right now. Ian, wow, what was that like?
It was definitely a challenge over the last few days, flying Sunday through Thursday, working many hours with a crew of 18 folks, our pilots, our mechanics and navigators and technicians, all keeping us flying. It's been a real grind for everybody. Glad to have it pay off.
Yeah, what is it that you guys are trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish there?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We're trying to find, where is the storm exactly so that we can get that information to the National Hurricane Center. We're trying to find out what the lowest pressure is and how large that wind field is. And, what this is doing is it's allowing the National Hurricane Center and the local weather forecast offices to provide the best warnings and advisories for all the people who are in harm's way all along the western coast of Florida and now as it's moving up the East Coast.
How dangerous is it for you to be doing this?
You know what? We have a great group of trained pilots and people that maintain our airplane, and we go in with a really good plan. I wouldn't call it dangerous, but we definitely are cautious in our approach, and we make sure that everything that we're doing safely and well thought out.
Is it a rocky ride?
It definitely can be a rocky ride. At times, it could be quite violent. Fortunately for us, most of these flights were relatively smooth. Sometimes it would get a little bit worse than your worst commercial airline flight, but the duration of those times was relatively short.
What is it that you can tell us specific to this hurricane that you have found interesting as a result of your research gathering?
Yeah, this one was really interesting. We picked it up from as an invest. I mean, we were following this last week as a low-level invest, and then as it struggled to maintain or struggled to get organization, it was not developing quickly as some of the models were predicting. And so what we were doing is we were really just trying to see how the structure of the tropical system was pulling itself together, and then finally last night how it all kind of came together.
Wow. Well, it's very interesting talking to you. You certainly got an interesting job. Thank you very much. Ian Sears.
Hey, it's my pleasure to be here, Trish. Thank you.
All right. Tropical storm Hermine causing East Coast flight delays and threatening travel plans over this Labor Day weekend. Joining me right now with more on that, Janine Torador. Let me ask you, Janine, what should travelers really be expecting this holiday weekend? Are you anticipating that we'll see a lot of setbacks at the airports, for example?
Well, the good news for travelers thus far is that the path of this hurricane really missed some major airports, including Atlanta and Orlando. The brunt of it thus far in terms of travel impact we've seen at some of the smaller airports, including Jacksonville, Savannah, which don't see the volume of flights. So that's good news for a lot of travelers heading to the south. What folks can expect as we head into the weekend is, of course, this is moving north up the coast. And because the Hurricane Center hasn't predicted the exact path of this storm, travelers should kind of be cautious, even if you're traveling to places as far north as Virginia Beach and New York. We're seeing that the airlines are even proactively offering, waiving their change and cancellation fees as far north as for flights to New York because they just don't know what's going to happen.
So what's going to be most tricky? You think people trying to get back on Monday?
It could be, depending on where you are flying out of and flying back to. Right now what we're telling travelers at this point is to check with your airlines, see what your options are if you want to change flights and fly back a little bit later or a little bit earlier, because they are waiving those change fees and will allow you to do that proactively. Also, if you're planning on staying at a hotel in any of these affected areas, call your hotel directly and find out the condition of the hotel. Of course, a lot of these areas, especially in Florida, are seeing a lot of flooding. So you want to find out what the impact is there locally so that you can change your travel plans accordingly.
All right. Well, some good advice there. Thank you so much. Good to have you here, Janine. All right, new fears, everyone, that the heavy rainfall and debris left by Hermine could hurt Florida's fight against the Zika virus. Officials warning the public right now to steer clear of any standing water. I want to go to Dr. Debbie right now, who's here on set with me for a look at how people can protect themselves against this virus. I mean, Florida's already struggling significantly with this. How does the weather affect all of it?
Well, the more standing water you have, the more likelihood that you have mosquitoes breeding. So this particular mosquito that gets infected with the Zika virus, it can breed in just enough water to fill a bottle cap. So that's all it needs to actually reproduce.
Oh my goodness.
Exactly.
They were talking about 1 square mile there in Miami as being the area that you needed to stay away from if you were a pregnant woman, for example. Do you think that that square mile is going to expand to more as a result of the hurricane?
Well, it could potentially. It's always better to be cautious, right? So the more mosquitoes you have, especially if you're in an area, even if you don't have local transmission yet, the more mosquitoes you have, the more likely that one of them will get infected with Zika and then start transmitting
What do you tell women of childbearing age about going to Florida right now?
Well, it's interesting because my sister is there also, actually. So if you're pregnant, you have to be very concerned. So you want to try to avoid those areas that the CDC issued a travel alert against. If you're trying to get pregnant and you're going to an area like that, then you want to be cautious as well. Protect yourself from mosquitoes. So in terms of trying to protect yourself, especially with the hurricane, I mean, the best thing is to stay away from standing water. So for the folks who are in the hurricane path, for example, we're used to thinking about the water flooding the streets or swimming pools, but actually with the debris, I mean, even if you have bottle cans, spare tires, gutters that are clogged, all these pool covers that might have water in it. You want to try to get rid of all of those things. And then if you do get bitten by a mosquito in an area that might be high risk, if you're a woman and you're trying to get pregnant, maybe wait 8 weeks just to be safe. That's how long it takes to clear the virus.
Oh my goodness.
And if you're a man trying to get someone pregnant or having sex with someone who's pregnant, you want to wait 6 months if you could be infected.
6 months.
With Zika.
Oh my goodness. Are you worried about this becoming a real epidemic?
I do have some worries about it because the thing is, I mean, we had the Ebola situation just a couple years ago and people got very worried about that. And I think now, because we tended to get through that relatively safely, we're not taking this as seriously as we should. And on top of that, with Ebola, it was more a matter of supportive treatment. If you could get through it, you would be okay. Whereas here, we don't have a treatment, we don't have a vaccine, and if a child gets infected, so if the baby gets infected in the mother's womb, well, that's a lifetime that's going to affect that child and the family.
Well, Dr. Debbie, thank you so much for explaining it all. Good to have you here in the coming weeks. Sparked by the outrage over Mylan's EpiPen price sparks, Hillary Clinton is out with a plan to crack down on those drug companies and their price hikes of prescription drugs. But will this plan help or just make things worse? I want to go to Christy Setzer, Patrice Lee, Amonuka, and Kathy Lynn Taylor. Good to see all of you here. Kathy Lynn, I'm going to start with you. Okay, so she wants to come up with some kind of rule and regulation that will prevent these drug companies from hiking prices. Is that okay?
It's not okay, and it's just another example of Hillary Clinton trying to run our lives when government isn't proving to be very effective at running things. I want to know, is she going to come over and make dinner and clean up for my kids tonight? That would be terrific.
That would help, right?
Look, we know two things about regulation and financial markets, or one thing I should say, and that is that they work better when there's not a lot of regulation. And companies have responsibilities to shareholders and employees and consumers and the community. And Mylan's figuring that out right now. They're already facing tremendous consumer pressure, tremendous competitive pressure, and it will work itself out through market forces.
You look at Mylan, and I don't begrudge a company the opportunity to make as much money as they can, but I don't like the idea of the fact that the FDA made it so impossible for anybody else to be in there to compete, because it looks like that regulation effectively is handing a monopoly to Mylan. Would you agree with that, Patrice? I mean, did they basically have full authorization effectively from the government in the way of all this regulation from the FDA to move forward with price hikes?
Absolutely. Let's not forget, this is just an example of when big business and big government work together. And apart from the FDA, which certainly has a lot of responsibility here, let's look at the Obama administration in 2013 passing bipartisan legislation to ensure that EpiPens were fully stocked in public schools and tying some sweetheart incentives to that. So big business, big government, and cronyism is what has us here. Mylan certainly is on the hook for increasing their prices, but let's not let Washington off the hook either.
Well, that's a very good point, because Christy, I'll tell you, they spent all kinds of money. $4 million in lobbying money is what Mylan spent in order to secure that contract. And once they secured the contract, suddenly the EpiPen went from, what, $59 back in the day to $600 for a package of 2? Seems something awfully wrong with that. How do we prevent that kind of crony capitalism?
Look, I agree. I mean, look, there's many components, though, to this Clinton prescription drug plan. Some of it is aimed at helping consumers, and some of it is aimed at helping the behavior of these big drug companies. So in general, what she's looking to do is have them spend a little bit more of their time on research and developing good drugs, and a little less time in marketing and selling drugs that people don't actually need out there, right? So I agree with you. There's sort of a larger culture problem in Washington right now as to how big money and big lobbying can secure things in government. That's certainly not a partisan issue. Yeah. But I do think that this, that this plan will solve some important problems.
Yeah, this concern, it is somewhat of a partisan issue, because when you have a government such as the one we've seen that really wants to put more and more regulation into an industry, that tends to benefit some of the players that are already there in the space. And Kathy Lynn, it tends to also benefit the lobbying companies that are actively doing this. They're the ones making a lot of money on it.
That's right, it does. It benefits them, and it is a partisan issue, unfortunately. I agree with you, Trish, because, at the end of the day, Hillary Clinton is not in a position, nor does she have the background, really, to be telling these companies how to run their business. What we know happens when we overregulate companies is what we have today. Fewer companies, fewer new businesses starting, and they employ most of the people in this country, so that means fewer jobs being created, more and more people leaving the workforce altogether, 1 in 7 people living in poverty in this country. So really, that's not the right answer, to add more regulation to
I'm not
those
sure
who can least
how
afford
that
it.
applies here. Listen, the issue of high drug prices is something that we've been addressing.
It applies because if you
since
overregulate companies, you either push them out of this country, or you have them spend so much money on regulations like the banks and the drug companies are doing, they can't afford to invest in new jobs.
That's not what's happened here. Look, back in 2002, when I was working up in Maine, we would run bus tours up to Canada where people had to, they were able to get cheaper prescription drugs. This is something that that we've been trying to address for years and years and years. I do think, unfortunately, that the way to get at this is to put some, regulations against these companies that are obviously having this outrageous behavior. And I think that, look, there's sort of universal revilement.
Give me one example where that's
There's
worked
been
in the
universal
past.
revilement of these large executives who sort of have free reign to do what they want.
And this particular executive, I should point out, at Mylan was a big contributor. The company was a big contributor to none other than the Clinton Foundation. We'll leave that for another day. But, look, bottom line, I think any economics 101 textbook will tell you this. The more competition you have, the lower the prices are going to be. Thank you, ladies. Good to see all you. All right, with new reports of secret deals for Iran during the nuclear talks in the wake of the Iranian vessels harassing our Navy ships, and a controversy over our Americans and a $400 million cash payment, General Jack Keane says it's no surprise more than half of Americans now believe the Iran nuke deal has made America less safe. General Jack Keane joins me now. General, are they right?
Oh, they're absolutely right, Trish. I mean, they're right on the money with this thing. This nuclear deal, whose intended purpose was to prevent the Iranians from ever having a nuclear weapon, as we are painfully aware of now, it permits them to have a nuclear weapon in 15 years, a threshold capability in 10 years, and equally disastrous, we're giving them $150 billion so they can return to their very aggressive behavior. And I think that is truly what has spooked the American people. You mentioned in the introduction, they're watching us harass our U.S. Navy ships in the Straits of Hormuz. They've seen the 4 missile medium ballistic tests that have gone off in the last year. They've taken the gloves off and they've returned to their very, very aggressive behavior, which makes the Middle East, and therefore us, more unsecure and less safe.
And do you worry, General, that we've basically given them effectively whatever they wanted? I just spoke in an interview a short time ago again with Pastor Saeed Abedini, and we're going to run that next week on the intelligence report. But he once again confirmed to me he was one of the hostages that was held over there in Iran that was trying to get back to the U.S., that he was held and he was told that he could not leave until the plane with the money landed. He was told this by an intelligence official, and he thought, well, our government doesn't pay ransom. Why would they be doing that? But he firmly believes that it was, in fact, a case of ransom. I mean, as the Iranians continue to push this administration, and as this administration says, okay, here, whatever you want, are we setting an incredibly bad precedent for all future dealings there with the Middle East?
Yeah, it certainly is. I mean, our Arab allies are so frustrated with us, Trish, having watched us bend over backwards to accommodate this nuclear deal and therefore make all accommodations and concessions to the Iranians over these last 8 years. It is just frustrating. They're fed up with us, and they're waiting for a new American president who they're hoping will be allied with them. But the truth is, it is clearly more dangerous. I mean, this idea that we would pay a debt of $1.3 billion that goes back to the Shah of Iran's time after 35 years of the Iranians sponsoring the killing of Americans for those years, and we would feel some obligation to pay that debt. That in itself is outrageous, and the $400 million is a part of that. None of this makes any sense.
Well, General, why do you think the president did it? Why was this so important to him?
He made it the centerpiece of his foreign policy initiative as president of the United States. He wanted to echo what Nixon had done, at least in talking to some of his advisors, Nixon had done with China. He thought it would elevate him to a very special status as being a president who changed the world to a certain degree and wanted this rapprochement with Iran. And what he's really got, this is a rogue state, thugs and killers, and they're going to continue to do that, and the Middle East will suffer, and so will U.S. National security, and the American people's instincts are, they're right on it, Trish. They got it.
General, thank you so much. Scary stuff. We're going to be right back.
Good talking to you.